Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing another buyer's guide, and in today's video we're doing Should You Buy Regiments, the recently released and published game by Microprose. Regiments is a Cold War real-time strategy game, and I find that it is fun, accessible, and a blast to play. It combines low lethality weapon systems with high lethality, so players will find themselves using ATGMs, T-80 tanks, napalm, clusters, and dual-purpose improvised cluster munitions, all on the battlefield of the Fulda Gap. So, without further ado, if you like military strategy, tactics, and doctrine and seeing it applied to strategy games, I guarantee this is the channel for you. So make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know what you think of Regiments. Did you buy it? What did it meet your expectations? Or is it the appetizer for the main course that is Combat Mission Cold War, War No, or Broken Arrow? So, without further ado, we're just going to talk about each real quick topic. We're going to go over this menu fairly quickly. We have tutorials. Tutorials, 3 basic tutorials. You're just going to cover movement commands, the E command, fast move. It's going to tell you how to utilize them. Overall, I find it being simple, easy to use, and it allows players to dive right in and prepare them for the operations. Next up is skirmish. We're going to go in-depth into skirmish much later. We're going to talk about the operations mode first, because the operations mode is the main course. It's what you need to play when you fire up regiments. As a skirmish player, I played skirmish in Red Alert, I played skirmish in Age of Empires, I play skirmish in every Cold War or every real-time strategy game. And while it's fun, in regiments, it is truly lacking in my opinion. So we're going to continue down the menu. We have settings. Everything's fairly basic. I don't think there's really any accessibility settings. You have gameplay, you have controls. All the controls are your standard real-time strategy controls: right click, left click, rotate, move. You're not going to be shocked or surprised by anything. It does have a hard FPS cap at 60. Next up, we have the Regipedia. Over here, we're going to see all sorts of weapon systems, and it's going to talk about the unit mechanics, the game mechanics, the operations, the platoon icon up here on the right-hand side. I strongly suggest you come over here in the menu if you do buy the game and review this platoon icon, because it's going to save your butt a bunch of times. As you can see, there's like a little white bar that tells you your units are dismounted, your ammo, your hold fire, your durability, your suppression rate, and their rank. So when you're pulling your units out of battle, hitting that QQ, you want to save your units that are ranking up. You don't want to throw everyone into a meat grinder. All right, unit types. Obviously, there's several unit types: from mortar, artillery, supply units, 2 different types of mortars, self-propelled, as well as artillery. And there's also a multi-launch rocket system. If you like your Grad missiles, you will find them here, because this is a Cold War game. Every Cold War weapon system you can absolutely imagine. Unfortunately, not a lot of Sea Bernie. I mean, that was Iran-Iraq War, Cold War. We have Vietnam, Cold War. We have Desert Storm, kind of Cold War. Things like that. Over here, we have different types of vehicles. We have the M1 tanks, we have the Leopards, we have the Mirages, jets, clusters, napalm. Each of those weapons will be utilized on the battlefield in a different way. You can zoom in, zoom out. We can see over here on the right hand side, we get a detailed description. We can see this has a 25mm autocannon. It tells us our range, it tells us our unit, our rate of fire, overall our reaction time. Overall, awesome. A fantastic system in my opinion. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes. All right, let's click on number 4, operations. You have 7. Repeat, 7 operations. Each of those operations are varied and they are fun to play. One I would like to make note of is reaction. Why I want to make note of this is because this last line down here on the bottom, I cannot highlight it, but it says, for obvious reasons, reinforcements will be very limited. That is gameplay altering in this operation, and there may be other gameplay altering things mentioned during these operations. I find it quite strange that it's mentioned right there. Honestly, it should be in the card section. I'll go over the card section here momentarily. But having a gameplay altering mechanic right here in the description is kind of strange, because video games just say, oh, this is going on, but it doesn't really alter the flow of the gameplay. So that's going to be a bit jarring for players. So let's click on the very first operation, click to battle. Over here we see there's several phases: stage 1, 2 phases, stage 3, 3 phases, stage 3, 3 phases. There are a lot of constraints in this game, and that's going to be frustrating for new players, or frustrating for strategy gamers to begin with. There's a time limit. There's phase constraints. You're going to be while there is a lot of freedom in the game, you're going to be very constrained on how you play through the story. It's not just, hey, let me fire up, play through the story. This is so much fun. There are events that happen throughout the story, like ICBMs, chemical warfare, you're assigned objectives. Overall, it's a lot of fun, but those constraints are always going to be out there. And honestly, it reminds me a lot of Lost Planet and XCOM, because it's always like you go out into the cold, you lose health, you need to constantly just be working towards something. You're racing the clock, you're sweating. You have 30 minutes to achieve as much as you can, and your units are just getting shelled by artillery. The enemy's dug into their positions. You're just trying to drive them out, and they aren't leaving. You're trying to suppress them. They're suppressing you, and it creates a real fun tug of war. But honestly, sometimes it just feels like you're just pushing your way through a battle, grinding your way through, kind of smashing your head against the wall, trying to figure out a mechanic that works. And at the end of the day, it kind of feels like you're going to cheese the system, because you'll be like, oh, this works reliably 100% of the time. I'll meet an entrenched enemy, cluster bomb them, tank them. Okay, enemy reinforcements are coming, 2 to 3 things. I'll set up their flanks. Here they are. Cluster bomb, move. Like, it's fun maneuver warfare, but at the same time, it's very constrained. So obviously, I'm not going to go super in depth. There's ways to buy operational authority, like to upgrade your units. Over here, you can add task force to your regiment. You have several task force during this operation, task forces. And you have several phases that need to be completed. Obviously, like phase 1, 2, you have 2 phases to complete this one, then 3 phases to complete this one, and then 3 phases to complete this last objective. So that's just a constraint you'll have to deal with. The operations log provides a fun little overview of the game. It talks about, I believe, Afghanistan at one point, which I found slightly interesting. It just allows you to see perspective of someone overseas and what they think of the Afghanistan, or in the Afghanistan war that was involved with Russia. Victory points are how you're going to win the objective. Obviously, you'll get 230 and you're victorious. Hooray, you won that phase. And then you just play it through all the phases sequentially, all the way down through until you get to the afterward. And I feel like I've spent a lot of time in this game. I spent a lot of time in the operations mode. I spent a lot of time making tutorials for it. I feel like I can express my opinion or a should you buy guide on this game, especially because I've spent a lot of time with it and just trying to create videos. I've tried to master how the engineers work, how the recon units work, how the HQ units work, how to use them on the battlefield, where they apply, and I think the game leaves a lot to be desired in that area. So there's 3 different game modes for you in skirmish, meeting, attack, and mobile defense. Attack, you're going to be grinding against an enemy that's in a defensive position, so you're always going to be hitting your head against the wall. The enemy is provided with general AI buffs, so they're going to be able to outrange you. They're going to see you first. They're going to mortar you first. They're going to have more fire support. They're going to have artillery, tanks, anti-air, and overall, it's just going to be an absolute meat grinder, at least for the player, even on medium difficulty. So that's one thing you need to prepare yourself for. Over here, there's another time limit. Obviously, I know I've been reading in some forums that they want this time limit to go away. 20, 30, 40. There's no mid-game save. So if you gotta go somewhere, you gotta hit that spacebar to pause it. It will not allow you to save it. You can change some of the advanced rules. There's so many maps, so much fun, so much variety. There's also so many different types of day. I don't know if it needs this many like different varied forecasts, but it's an opportunity. You can conduct night battles, you can conduct day battles. You can be like, hey man, I want to know what it's like to battle at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, slightly overcast with the storm on its way in. That's absolutely maybe you're like, hey, it's sunrise. We all just woke up and the Russians are mortaring our position. Hey, let's get rid of them. Or I guess it'd be the Soviet Union. All right, so we're just going to click day 1 clear. And we're just going to be this unit over here. I like them because they have the little improvised cluster munitions that we can call onto our position, a little alpha jet we can put to work. You can have up to 4 units on the battlefield or 4 teams. So you have an AI partner with you, or you can fight off 2 enemy AI. So let's hit 2 battle. We're going to wait for this to load. And then we're going to go real in-depth into the UI. Like super in-depth. All right, and here we are. Right on the screen, we see that pause button right there. We see the time limit all the way at the top, 30 minutes. We have our menu over here on the left-hand side. Right there, we have our map over here on the right. And over here, we have the way to speed up and slow down battle. So what we can do is we can click on the map, and we can start deploying units, and we're just going to move them to this first covered position. We're going to get our leopards ready for battle. They're going to have fun. They're going to rage war. They're going to call home. They're going to have overall a fantastic time. All right, and then we're going to hit the spacebar button, and we're going to send those units to battle, and we're going to check out some of the visuals. So if you hit the I key, the UI goes away, and you get a fantastic cinematic experience. As you can see, we have what looks to be IFVs armed with autocannons, and what are those, ATGMs? We have Leopard tanks right here moving into battle. Everything is a squad ranging from 3 to 4. So you're moving squads around the battlefield. If you hit the U key, you make your cursor go away. We're going to bring that bad boy back, or the O key, not the U key. All right, units are forming their front line. Ideally, you want to keep units quite far apart because you don't want them to get mortared or airstruck all in one cluster location. Each of these villages, as you can see over my cursor, provides some sort of advantage. This means they are in a defensive position. If units stop moving for 30 seconds or more, they become instantly in place, and that provides them with a defensive cover or a defensive position, a modifier of sorts. And that's going to allow you to really enjoy the game. But remember, we're on the attack. We need to go, 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 go. So one thing we need to make note of is we need to hit the X key to get all these IFVs to dismount their units. So they drop. We have infantry now on the battlefield. Infantry are not individually controllable in regiments. I know that's something that was wanted or at least mentioned in the forums during the beta, and I believe that's something they were trying to put in the game. I'm not quite sure. We have first contact. As you can see, we have an unidentified hostile. We have artillery fire falling on our position. As you can see, general AI favorability, 1, 2, 3 artillery strikes falling on our position, 1 BMP. Not quite sure if it's buff, but I guarantee they have ATGMs, and they're going to shred our tanks, right? Little shredders with their Ninja Turtles running after us. Our leopards are in a defensive position. Should be relatively okay, but we're going to keep an eye on them. All right, now let's talk about this over here on the right-hand side, our movement menu. So over here, you have your general controls, V to rotate your unit if you want to change its face, R to reverse. Generally, you want to reverse out of fighting positions because you want your front of your armored vehicle to face the enemy. That's one thing that's kind of not really unique, but each sides of the armor are different and varied. So if you expose your flank to an enemy, they are going to get immediately destroyed by an ATGM or an armor-piercing round. Something to make note of. F1 allows you to go into free camera mode, zoom in, zoom out, fly towards the map. So you can take a bunch of fun screenshots, cinematic experience, and just share all that with your friends. F1 brings you back out. Hit spacebar to pause, unpause. See if we can click on a unit, see what we get going, bring everything back up. E is attack. One thing to make note about E is it's not an actual attack command. It's just a movement command, so your units will move to attack. Kind of confusing because it's still the generic right click to attack. So if we wanted to move these units up to an identified unit, we would use that E key. Something to make note of. There's a hold fire. You'll generally put that on artillery if it's running out of ammo, or if you just don't want them shelling away, or you can put it on your recon unit. And obviously retreat. This game is so big on the retreat mechanic. Like, if you take anything away from this buyer's guide, this game is big on retreat. Do not grind your units to a pulp. You need that experience. They become more accurate. They become more lethal. And generally, it's going to improve your battle and your gameplay experience. Overall, it's just a fun, accessible, easy game to pick up and play. It's simple. It's like the appetizer for the main course, which is the more upcoming Cold War games. It shows that there is a need and desire for Cold War games. I believe this was mentioned in one of the Command Modern Operations forums, is like players, they like general like mid-level lethality games where it's not so much precision, ammunition, and mortars, just like high lethality. It becomes overwhelming in a lot of systems to manage. But if you find that nice balance between like mid-lethality and funness and a lot of fun weapon systems, but survivability, you're going to have a blast and you're going to create a fun, accessible game. So like I said, it's like the fun little appetizer. I do think you should buy it at least for the operations mode. You're going to have a fun and a lot of fun in that mode. The skirmish mode, it needs work. It needs a lot of work. The skirmish mode is going to show a lot of the rough edges and regiments. And I said that during the beta. I said that like a lot, that the skirmish, it just needs improvement. The AI either needs to be toned down. Like you already saw, they have 3 artillery units on the battlefield. They're going to outspot you. They have ranges of like 3,000 meters. They're also it's fairly, and I understand why, like, generally, like, the human opponent's just going to eventually outmaneuver and destroy them. But it's not so much that they're going to outmaneuver, it's just they're going to outcheese them. It's going to be like, hey, man, I'm throwing a bunch of Swiss at you today. And you're just going to go, okay, this tactic works. It works 100% of the time. Tanks, mortars, artillery. All right, this is my favorite task force to use with this division because I have my leopards on the battlefield. They have a high survivability. They do good suppression. And I'll just reinforce them with a lot of artillery. My artillery is going to do good. And then I will just cheese my way through the game. It's not so much about tactics. It's just slowly becomes a roaming death ball of cheese. Overall, it's a fun, accessible game. I know that last part sounded like a rant, but I know I tried to make a bunch of videos on a lot of the mechanics, and with the way the AI is currently, just like overpowered, it makes a lot of the like HQ worthless, especially in skirmish. The HQ just feels absolutely abysmal and worthless. The engineers, they feel absolutely abysmal and worthless. I don't even know if they do their job, because their job is supposed to drive infantry units out of their fighting position because they have incendiary rockets. But you can't test it because you get outranged. And you get outranged because the AI has an advantage. So you have all these tools that you can use that you will not use on the battlefield. You'll never see yourself using engineers in skirmish. Even though they have that fun little mechanic of removing suppression, they need to get too close. And so you can't use it. So you just find yourself, okay, cluster artillery negates suppression. Napalm negates suppression. Fire negates suppression. Okay, I'll just cluster artillery this position. I'll drive my tanks up. I'll support them with my APCs and their ATGMs, and I'll just eventually destroy and suppress everyone. All right, on to the next one. On to the next one. On to the next one. Over and over and over again. Endless cycle. The game does have a lot of varied mechanics, but I mean, every game has its faults at the end of the day. So if you wanted a fun little appetizer for a Cold War game, I guarantee you'll enjoy this. You'll have fun playing it. Let me know down in the comments if you picked it up. Other than that, peace out, guys.